Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth, along with newly appointed South Florida Tribune editor Louis Adeoye. And leading off, we are here in baseball, our baseball analyst Mark Littell. And Mark, glad to have you back on the show.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I'm a baseball analyst now. I love that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it keeps rising every time. That's pretty cool.
Beautiful thing. Well, we got a baseball analyst, we have an editor, and me, well, fill in the blank. I don't care.
The Motor City Mad Mouth, soon to be trademarked, right?
Yeah, right. I'm working on that trademark, though, Marco. So, all right. Anyways, Louis, why don't you talk about the latest in baseball news?
Yeah, a lot going on. Mark, I'm excited to discuss it with you. As we saw go down, I believe, on Tuesday night, right around the time the clock hit 9, Cinderella didn't get her shoe yet, but Mookie Betts got a new team. You know, reports are coming out of Boston and L.A. that, the Dodgers agreed to a trade with the Red Sox to send Mookie Betts and David Price over there in exchange for, it's a 3-team trade, so Kenta Maeda, former starting pitcher / reliever, goes to the Minnesota Twins. Brusdar Graterol, who was a top pitching prospect in the Twin system, heads over to the Red Sox, and the Dodgers give up Alex Verdugo as well, going to the Red Sox to take over Betts' old cubicle out there in right field. Now, I've seen a lot of criticism come down on the Henry family over in Boston and just the front office in general. New general manager Chaim Bloom, as we know, comes from Tampa Bay, a market which me and Scott discussed in the pre-production of the show. Rooted in analytics, they don't have as much money, so you kind of have to scrap together like Oliver Twist and get your food in as far as they have with talent. You know what? Personally, before I defer to you, I don't think this trade is terrible. I honestly think that the Red Sox did what they had to do, given Mookie turned down an extension for 10 years and $300 million. His camp actually countered with an offer, I believe that was around 12 years, $400 million. And look, you can make the argument that Betts is one of those players who merits a deal like that. And I'll give you a number real quick. Other than Mike Trout, Mookie Betts leads all of baseball in wins above replacement since the start of 2014. And he debuted mid-season. The guy pretty much does everything. He's led the league in runs scored the last 2 years. He's won 4 consecutive Gold Gloves, 3 Silver Sluggers, been an All-Star 4 straight times. He's got an MVP to his name. He's won a World Series. Question the validity of that if you want, given everybody likes to steal signs like a kid pit-pocketing for ice cream money. But at the end of the day, Mookie Betts has 1 year left of club control. He's making $27 million this year. He's going to be a free agent. He had an off year in 2019, yet he was still, I believe, 4th in Major League Baseball in wins above replacement. To me, he's one of the 2 best players in baseball. He's 1A, 1B with Trout. You're a pitcher, so we'll talk about him real quick. David Price went to the Dodgers in that trade. Right. Give me your take before we go to Betts. Give me your take on Price, because pitcher to pitcher, what do you really think about David Price now going to the National League West, a division he's never pitched in before? He's never pitched in the National League either.
At $96 million is left on his contract, I think.
Mm-hmm. And Boston covers half of that.
Well, that's a bundle. And then either way, it's a bundle. David Price is older. He's had surgery.
Mm-hmm.
He can rebound. He can pitch. He's quality. He's a Vanderbilt pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
They've had a lot of guys come out of there that were pretty good. Not saying anything about that, but they've had some pretty good recruits. The other factor about Price is, though, Los Angeles got, Price, and that's pitching. And if you look at Betts and you look at Trout, Trout is, to me, the best player, and, if you want to put Betts right, second or third, or whatever he is, that's fine. But Trout's never experienced the World Series yet either.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to look at all the pitching that is out there, because I'm a pitching guy, and when it comes down to it, you're going to see in the World Series, they're going to talk about the pitchers more than they are the hitters at the end, because they're going to say, have they got enough pitching?
Scott?
Well, David Price might be that one guy that comes in and gives you those 2 and 3 innings that they use him out of the pen, because they have they got so many heavyweights out there. Los Angeles does, and he could be your 4th or 5th starter at that time, or fill in, or go back and forth. He's of age, and he's got a World Series under his belt. So there's a lot of good things about having David Price on your team. It tells me that Boston's not ready to win. That's why they got rid of Betts. So they're basically starting all over at ground zero of rebuild. And that's the same thing like Tampa Bay. I remember when they started from ground zero rebuild, and you're paying out $300 million, and you got $96 million. That's a bundle of change out there that, and not to win on and end up where they were last year. So it's.
Both of you guys make some interesting points, so let me throw this out there. It's not uncommon for starting pitchers to reinvent themselves in the bullpen. I'll give you a few that come to mind. Everybody knows, Mark, about Dennis Eckersley becoming a reliever in the twilight of his career. John Smoltz had the role for a long time, and those are just a couple that come to the top of my head. So if you can turn him into a long reliever, a guy that'll give you 2, 3, 4 innings, or let alone a save specialist, with perhaps 2 innings. And let's not forget about the fact that you have that new rule where a pitcher's required to go ahead and pitch to at least 3 hitters. So I think there's a lot of interesting variables in that. David Price could very well reinvent himself in the National League and in a whatever role he may indeed have out there. I would think he's going to be a starter, but yes, there are some possibilities out there.
You'd be correct in that assertion, Scott, because David Price is one of those guys, and Mark, you came from the school of pitching where guys were throwing. I mean, Steve Carlton was among the best pitchers in baseball, probably the best pitcher in baseball other than Tom Seaver when you debuted in '73. He had just come off winning a Cy Young Award for a 59-win Phillies team that year, won 27 games in '72. But pitchers back then, relievers pitched longer innings because there weren't as many in the rosters, and starters were throwing 290, 300 innings a year. I mean, think of the guys like Wilbur Wood or even Carlton who did that consistently. Price kind of comes from that school of thought, though, because if you really look at the back of his baseball card, almost every year that he was a full-time starter after 2009, 200 innings, 200 innings, 200 innings. That 1 year in 2013 where he's hurt, he's one of those guys. And for him to be making $48 million as far as what the Dodgers are paying him, they're gonna expect him to start. But the problem that I have with that, and again, personally, he's gonna have to be in that rotation. You look at their projected rotation now, and you have Kershaw, Price, Buehler, Wood, Urias. If you notice a theme with that rotation, there's 4 left-handed pitchers in that rotation. And Mark, I want to get your take on this. I want a rotation where at least I have, if I have 5 guys in there, I have maybe 3 righties, 2 lefties, or vice versa, because you need to split that up to go into a 3-game series. And say you go in with your 4, 5, and 1, and you're going to face Wood, Urias, and Kershaw, 3 straight lefties. That doesn't do much for you. However, on paper, those are 5 amazing. You have one Hall of Famer bona fide there in Kershaw, a guy in Buehler who, if he keeps going at the rate he is, could merit that discussion. Price has had a pretty great career to this point. He's won a Cy Young Award. But, you have the torn UCL and David Price you're worried about. He hasn't thrown 200 innings since 2016. Kershaw hasn't eclipsed 200 innings since 2015. Both years those guys did that. Those were career highs. And after that, it's kind of been a steep decline of injuries, though both of them have still pitched relatively well when they're on the field. Point here is, though, you have a great team on paper, and, Betts makes them even better, too, although they have a million outfielders, but there's another trade that they made right after this that we'll get to in a second. I think you're still going off the hope that Betts is going to make you a World Series favorite, and having Price, who's conquered those postseason demons, the way Kid does a monster under his bed, I think you're going to be, pleasantly surprised with how he pitches. Nobody knows him in that division. They really don't. I mean, Max Muncy, who's on that team now, faced Price a little bit when he was a member of the Oakland A's in the American League because Price has pitched his entire career in the American League. Again, you have a lot of ifs on that team. They need everybody to stay healthy, and it's the same thing with the Yankees, who just lost James Paxton. You need your starting pitching to give you innings. The Dodgers don't have the best bullpen in baseball. It's a lot of older guys like Kenley Jansen. They're taking a chance on Jimmy Nelson and Blake Trinan. But again, everything needs to go right. They need to be healthy. They're gonna win this division handily, though the Diamondbacks are good. But at the end of the day, they really just need to make sure that everybody's healthy on that team, and Price is a big part of that.
Buehler is actually, in a sense, your number 1 right now because of his youth, and he's successful. He knows how to pitch. He knows how to win. Also, and then you've got Kershaw, who will fall into place because he's Kershaw. But Price will come in there as the number 3 in a sense, I guess, and then followed by the other 2. But the thing about him coming in, what you said, Lewis, was one big factor I was going to bring up, and yet you beat me to the draw on it. Is he hasn't been over in the National League yet, and I think he should have a field day, coming in his first year anyway, and I mean, good hitting, good pitching, man. he can still throw. Don't get me wrong, but he's going to feel revived a little bit. He's going to feel a little bit refreshed. You know, especially getting out of Boston. You know, in that walleye tier, and you know, looking at a totally different ballpark rather than the Fenway Park. But there's so many variables there.
Mark, I'm going to make a comparison to who David Price is probably going to morph into now as a starter, though I think he'll have greater success. And I'll relate it to a guy that you competed against, and Scott, you followed as a kid, and that's Frank Tanana. Remember when Frank Tanana came up, and I believe in the early 70s with the Angels, and Nolan Ryan had just been traded over there from the Mets in that Jim Fregosi trade. And Frank Tanana pitched in the major leagues for a long time. He won 240 games. Frank Tanana, the old adage was he's the only guy who can throw 90 in the 70s and 70 in the 90s. What that means is that as he lost velocity, he still he retaught himself how to pitch. The one pitcher that I would compare Price to for two reasons is, one, he's left-handed, two, he's won a Cy Young Award, and three, he's had to change teams before, and that's CC Sabathia. We saw the last few years of CC Sabathia's career as injuries started to pile up, particularly in the legs, and then he had a shoulder injury.
He was fat.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely enjoyed putting a little extra cheese on the hot dog or burger every time he went out to eat. But the thing is being said, Sabathia was a pitcher who knew how to compensate for his loss of velocity. He knew how to, he cut the fastball more. He threw a lot more breaking stuff. He prioritized his changeup more. Price has always had very good stuff outside of the fastball. The slider, to me, has been a terrific pitch for him. His changeup has been an equalizer most of his career. His velocity has gone down. You can use sites like Fangraphs to even see his average fastball velo has dropped the last couple of years, but he's still topping out 92, 93 miles an hour. He's still a relatively good strikeout pitcher. I believe he had 10.7 strikeouts per 9 and 107 innings pitched last year. So David Price still has the stuff that it takes to get hitters out. The thing is, though, he's going to just have to pitch a different way now, the way that Sabathia did, given that he's getting older, he's had injuries, and you know what? You kind of need to extend your career any way you can and justify $217 million that was given to you, 4 or 5 years ago now.
Well, I think there's only one word that really describes Frank Tanana. Mark, I think we both know that the word become a crafty pitcher. Craft. That's all. He had to reinvent himself.
Well, left-handers are known to be crafty because they do have David Price will throw his sinker, and he'll throw it well. And I know Frank Tanana pretty well, actually, because Don Drysdale, I remember, took us out to dinner one night, and Frank and I were going together because we both started against each other that night. We knew each other. And so after the game, we had already planned to go out, and then Drysdale comes down, and he was calling the games for the Angels right there anyway. And he said, where are you two guys going? I said, Frank said, we're going to go out and eat. He says, no, you're not. I go, so I'm going to take you guys out. He says, I'm going to show you what's going on. It's pretty cool. Here's, Don Drysdale taking us two out. I thought that was really neat. But, Frank, I didn't know he won 240 games. I mean, that's more than, that's almost me nowadays. Everybody talks about CC Sabathia. He's only won 210 or something like that. The only reason they talk about him is because, one, he's a freaking Yankee, folks. Sorry. But,
that's all right.
Come on. I mean, good grief, he's fat. And so, there's a reason why he could only pitch, when he chose, he could go up in the booth. Have you ever heard of that? No, I don't think so. But anyway, I got on CC the other day on Facebook because he was popping off about something, and I said, you don't need to pop off, no, and somebody said, well, who are you? And I said, well, I played myself too. And the funny thing is that, he was popping off about, I can't even remember, but I'm not even going to bring it up. It made me so mad. He should worry about, his thoughts, because if he wants to be a radio personality and ESPN, things like that, you can't just go out there spurting stuff off. Right. And, he was talking about the Yankees should have those the trophies instead of Houston, and then Los Angeles won them. And I said, well, heck, before you know it, the Royals will won them. Good grief. I couldn't believe it. Because you can't have that if you're a national broadcaster. You can't say things like that. So, beside the point. Anyway, David Price is going to be fine. And then, Betts, he's going to be fine. He's for him, too. It's just, though, that you've got one. Everybody talks about the hitters. It's really about the pitching. But, Betts is going to do just fine. He'll rebound a little bit. Trout's going to do what he's supposed to do. He's over on the other side right there.
Mm-hmm.
The other guy, the Twins came out to me with a B rating. To me, you look at a C rating for Boston, and then you got about an A or A plus rating for the Dodgers, the way they came out in the trade.
Well, remember the Dodgers won 108 games last year and haven't won since 1988. Do you think the word desperation is part of the whole thing? And I'll say one thing about Fenway Park, nobody knows it better than you, is that's a bandbox for crying out loud. You can launch missiles, and you go to that short right field fence, what do they call it, the pesky pole.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a lot of cheap home runs there. Everybody beats up on Coors Field, but what about Fenway Park over the years being a hitter's ballpark? But yeah, I think, you go to a real ballpark like Dodger Stadium, and then numbers go in more line. But I think you both are right. David Price is going to the National League, which is known for a pitcher's league anyhow. And, he's going to have some good players around him, and it's a change of scenery, for crying out loud, above and beyond anything else. And I know, Mark, you probably know, Boston's not an easy place to play anyways. The media, the fans, and just overall in general.
Well, I've always liked playing in Boston, to tell you the truth, for some reason. But it's the very, very first place I ever got a standing ovation. Now, you're not going to get that in Yankee Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
But I did get it in Boston for some reason. I'm real surprised. But those people right there, they're up close and personal. It's almost like you can touch the wall out there, the monster and the green monster. And all of a sudden, these fans, they're right there. And you turn around, they're right on top of you as well. So it's a small ballpark. It's quaint. I like pitching there. It's old time. And, kind of reminded me of home in a sense because of the old ballparks you have that you grew up with.
Right.
So.
Well, I grew up with Tiger Stadium, so that was a pretty good ballpark in its own right.
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
yes, it was.
Well, I brought it up. How did you like pitching in Tiger Stadium?
I had fun there. I liked it okay. Yeah, sure did. Matter of fact, Fidrich was pitching one night, and it was packed. And I remember coming outside the door, and there was a guy that fell backwards off the very top and died right there.
Wow.
Never forget that.
Well, you brought up Mark Fidrich. I have to ask you now that you brought him up. What were your thoughts of Mark Fidrich as a pitcher? He was a folk hero back in the day, wasn't he?
Bird.
Yeah.
Oh, he's great. He threw a little sinker up there. He pitched. He really pitched. David Price is the pitcher. And, everybody talks about velo and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, he's got good stuff, but he also knows how to pitch.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big difference. You got guys that throw hard and don't know how to pitch, but you also got guys that throw hard and have movement, and they know where it's going.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Well, now that we're talking the Red Sox, let's talk a little bit about what you said earlier. I agree with you that in the next few years they may be faced with the existential baseball question of whether or not they rebuild. But I'm going to read you the projected lineup now, and it's really not bad. I mean, this team's still going to score a lot of runs. The one thing I'll say is this. Mookie Betts is a generational player. I think he, along with Trout, will go, and maybe even Christian Yelich, will go down among some of the better position players we've seen in the last 10 to 15 years. But listen to this lineup, Mark, and because I think it's this lineup's poised to score a lot of runs, given the ballparks they're going to be playing in the AL East. You're going to have Verdugo projected to play right field. Rafael Devers, who broke out, will play third base. Benintendi in left. He's been good. He hasn't really become the superstar that we thought when he was drafted out of, I believe, Arkansas, if I'm not mistaken. Bogart's a shortstop. He's locked up. He's a cornerstone piece. Another great year for him last year. J.D. Martinez at DH. The 2 years he's had in Boston have been absolutely terrific. I mean, Michael Chavis at second base is going to hit a lot of home runs. Dustin Pedroia at this point is about as reliable as David Wright. He's pretty much their David Wright at this point in Pedroia. Mitch Moreland re-signed. He's a stabilizing force. He'll maybe hit you 15 to 20 home runs, play decent defense for you. Christian Vasquez, who's become their starting catcher. And then you have Jackie Bradley Jr. in center field. This team's going to score a lot of runs. I think, again, it's just going to come down to the problems they have with their starting pitching. Chris Sale's elbow is bummy. Nathan Eovaldi looked like absolute fecal matter when he was on the mound. I mean, pardon that. I mean, $68 million, and he looked atrocious after what he did in the postseason last year. Eduardo Rodriguez really established himself. I think he did great. Martin Perez, if you notice a trend here, both of these teams have very left-handed heavy rotations. But I think Verdugo is a cheap piece that he's gonna stabilize, and he's gonna hit a lot more in that ballpark. He's a right-handed hitter, for Christ's sake, and he's gonna be hitting a lot of balls off the green monster. I mean, the dents from Alex Verdugo are gonna be, upteeth. There's gonna be a lot of them. Boston, it's funny, I told Scott this in our pre-production. Caesar Sportsbook, which, if any of our listeners don't know, is Vegas' sports betting odds, and they kind of take into account the team on paper and what they expect them to do. when Mookie Betts was traded, their sports book only had them projected from 87.5 wins and only fell to 86.5. This is still a very good team. At the end of the day, though, I like I said, when Bryce Harper left the Nationals, one team doesn't make a player. They won the World Series the next year. He had a good year in Philadelphia, and they're glad they don't have to pay him $300+ million. But at the end of the day, you can still get pieces for how much one player may cost and disperse it. That's what they did in 2013 when they signed Johnny Gomes, Koji Ohara, and all of those guys that came on that team. And it was a collective thing. They won the World Series that year.
Right.
Again, I still think this is a good team. They're probably going to finish in third place to Tampa Bay because Tampa Bay just builds good players out of wood like Pinocchio. I mean, at the end of the day, the Yankees are the Yankees, and they have their problems too, and nobody's really perfect at this point. This is still a very credible Major League team. They shouldn't be upset. They got the most they could for Betts.
You have to look down in the system, the minor league system, also to see what they really have down there. Because if you look at how much they've been hurt with certain trades, some of these organizations have been hurt with their minor league systems. And then there's still Arredondo out there. See,
Arenado, yeah,
to trade, and to trade and or whatever. But he, I'm sure they're going to try to get rid of him before the season starts because I don't think the fans are going to warm up to him too well at all. Yeah. And then somebody. I look at the Cardinals because I'm around them a little bit more, but they're short. Right now, and they need a center fielder, but they're very money conscious, and they've done quite well. I mean, that general manager does a pretty darn good job, very competitive from year to year. Mm-hmm. Over there, he's steady.
Yeah, Schultz has done a fantastic job. Totally understood. Now we're gonna get to one more trade. I believe we have about 8 to 10 minutes left, and literally minutes after Mookie Betts was announced that this trade would be happening, Jeff Passan of ESPN, of course, reporting that Jock Peterson, another outfielder in the Dodgers, very cluttered outfield. I mean, you talk about finding 80 guys for 3 spots, and that's pretty much what it's been. Jock Peterson was traded to the Angels in exchange for Luis Rengifo and 2 prospects, those of which haven't been named yet. But in that trade, Andy Page is an 18-year-old outfielder who had a monster season in rookie ball in the Pioneer League in Single A at the age of 18, was in that deal, and Ross Stribling. Now, I'm going to ask you this, Mark. Again, we're going to stay on the subject of pitching because I think I like talking pitching more with you than anything because that's what you did. The Angels have had a phenomenal offseason, in my opinion. Tony La Russa comes into that front office. Joe Madden and Mickey Callaway come in to the coaching staff. Madden, of course, managing. Callaway, the pitching coach, the role that we've discussed before, I believe he's best suited for. And then they make some very sneaky good starting pitching moves. Julio Teheran, a 1-year, $9 million deal. He projects to be their opening day starter. Andrew Heaney, who is a holdover, former Miami Marlin, and then now with the Angels after a few years. Dylan Bundy from the Baltimore Orioles, who I think will pitch better given he's going from a boombox in Baltimore to a very pitchers-friendly park in Anaheim. Then you have Ross Stripling, who a 3.36 ERA since the start of 2017, and that's starting and relieving. And that's over 287 innings pitched. That's a pretty good sample size of time. And then you have Griffin Canning, their top pitching prospect. And Shohei Ohtani is going to be a DH too, but he can throw 100 miles an hour. And we saw at times in 2018 that guy can really light it up. He won Rookie of the Year that year. The Angels have a pretty good team on the field, and I think Peterson. The good thing that works for Peterson is this: in an era of platooning, and I want your take on this as well. He hits righties better than he does lefties. I have the numbers here. He's a career 188 hitter against lefties. So, simply put, he really couldn't hit water falling off a boat if a left-handed pitcher was on the mound. But against righties last year, he slugged .571. All of his 36 home runs came against righties. They have a guy in Joe Adell who they expect to play right field for them at some point in 2020. He's probably going to get 200 to 300 at bats. But Peterson is a nice holdover option. He's a free agent at the end of the year. He's only expected to make between $7 and $8 million in arbitration. His hearing is today, which is why that trade wasn't formally announced.
Right.
But you know what? Give me your take on that. Personally, I love the move for the Angels. I think they've made a lot of smart, under-the-radar moves that will make them a lot more competitive in the AL West in 2020.
Well, every year they always make smart moves, but they always end up in about third. Mm-hmm. But this year it should be different. Trout's going to have his normal year, and it's going to boil right back down to pitching. And when I was with the Royals and we won our first division, I'll never forget. I mean, we're basically a no-name pitching staff, and those pitchers you just named off, they're all known a little bit, but I mean, they're kind of a no-name pitching staff. But now you're going to put them all together, and you're going to put a little hitting with them, a lot of defense, and you're going to actually see those pitchers improve.
Yeah.
From this team, those pitchers are going to improve. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and you raise a very good point. I'm glad you say this, and you can attest to this too, Scott. Defense wins championships no matter what sport you play. Jock Peterson played all three outfield positions last year, and he was worth 11 defensive run saves, which means 11 more runs the Dodgers could have given up, but his defense facilitated in that. Trout had a weird defensive year last year. It wasn't terrible, but he was slightly below average by metrics, -1 defensive run save. But then when you throw him in with Andrelton Simmons, who is maybe the greatest defensive shortstop since Ozzie Smith and Cal Ripken, and then you put, at third base, you have Anthony Rendon, who's a really good defender. A big bat that I didn't even mention they added to that lineup, 7 years, $245 million. And then you look at David Fletcher, who's going to move around the field for you, a good defender at multiple positions as well. Like I said, this is a very intriguing team, and the AL West is always a fascinating division to me. Rangers moving into a new ballpark. The A's are going to find a way, like the Rays, to make it work. Billy Beane's in that front office, so you can expect some miracle to happen. And then, obviously the Astros, even despite the fact that they like to steal signs, they're still, on paper, one of the best teams in baseball, and they're going to probably win that division. But you can't tell me today that the Angels aren't at least a contender for the American League wild card.
Oh, big time, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say about the thing is Mickey Callaway's a fine pitching coach. Joe Mann's a heck of a manager. Don't lose sight of the fact that Garrett Cole, though, has a different area code. So, they're going to have to rely on Justin Verlander and a few other guys in that rotation in Houston. And they've got a bullseye in their chest, too, because now they don't look at them too kindly. Mark, the question I'm kind of curious about is this, and you were dancing around it in my head a little bit, and that's this. Major League Baseball is going to have a 26-man roster, 13 pitchers, and 13 position players all told. What are your thoughts about that implementation, Mark?
Well, it's hard to say because you got 13 pitchers. Anytime you got 13 pitchers, that's great. But you're going to have more moves by the manager being made. They talked about the DH coming over to the National League. You might as well just include that anyway with the 13 men already.
Right.
So I'm not real fond of the DH, but I mean, I like the manager to make the extra move because that's managing in the American League. I've even talked to Whitey about it. He said, American League's easy, and National League, you got actually, play chess. So, I mean, we went with 9 pitchers in the American League when we won it in 76. And for 1 month, Whitey pulled us into the office because he wanted some hitters. And he said, can you guys make this? Because I think you can. He's doing a sell job on us. I mean, we knew we could anyway. And we did, So we made it with 9 pitchers. We didn't make it. Then, you actually need one more pitcher in the National League, which you need at least 11. And, for sure, maybe sometimes 12 over in the National League because, they do make those extra moves. And then, but 13 pitchers, geez, they ought to be jumping for joy with that. I mean, good grief.
So then with that said, what are your thoughts about the 3-batter minimum?
Well, I don't know. We're just going to have to see it play out.
Yeah.
I think a lot of this is just play out. The other thing is when they stick that computer behind the plate, you're going to have to really see, are these guys going to throw the strike or, they're going to try to go outside the zone and, it's ball.
Right.
Too bad you're going to have to throw it through the zone. They're going to have to hit the shit out of it. So, good grief, and that machine, that computer's not going to lie.
Right.
So, and I'm sure somebody would love to take a sledgehammer to it, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love the 3-batter minimum as much as, some people may detest the DH. I think it's good at helping extend players' careers. I mean, for God's sake, Jim Thome wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame if it weren't for the DH, because if you look at the years he played with the Chicago White Sox, he was primarily a DH. The same thing when he played with the Minnesota Twins. Reggie Jackson, near the end of his career, was a DH as well when his defense kind of disintegrated before his eyes. Killebrew. Gorman Thomas, near the end of his career, after he was playing center field for Milwaukee, was a DH. I mean,
Ted Simmons.
Yeah, Ted Simmons was a DH. I mean, catchers benefit from that too because I believe, Mark, if I'm not mistaken, Milwaukee wasn't a National League team until the start of the 1994 season when they implemented, wild card play.
Yeah, well, right. You're right. Milwaukee went to the National League because that move was all spurred because the Cubbies are their natural rivalry. It's not like the Milwaukee Brewers and Chicago White Sox were a real major rivalry. But yeah, I understand. And then it all leveled off when Houston went to the American League later. But I see both of your points. I really do. I was just curious, Mark, as to what you thought about that 3 batter minimum. And I guess talking to a guy who's used to playing in an era where you have a reliever going 2 or 3 innings, it shouldn't have been a big deal anyways. But now all of a sudden the millennials are seeing it for the first time. Oh
because,
yeah.
You go out there and you throw pitchers more than what they're accustomed to.
Right.
They break easy.
Yeah.
So, they're like China.
They're like China.
That's pretty accurate, especially given the Dodgers rotation discussion that we just had. Now, I believe we have a couple of minutes left. Mark, did you want to tell a little bit about what you're doing with the foundation we were discussing about earlier?
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to be on the road for a couple weeks, and I'm going to be doing some veterans hospitals. I go to with the Wake Foundation. And Lewis, thanks for giving to the Wake Foundation on my birthday. Actually, I really appreciate that.
Of course.
And we did meet our goal, my goal rather, and many times over. I asked for 500, I got 900, and then the Wake Foundation is really helping out there, helping the VA, the veterans, and he does a lot, and they do a lot with the. One of my things is I get to go around and meet these guys and listen to them talk, and if they want to talk to me, and they most certainly normally do. And so I sit down and I talk to them. I just don't shake their hand and go. I sit there and I shake their hand, look them in the eye, and listen to them. And I enjoy meeting these guys. But their families, too, are sometimes in those rooms in the hospitals. And, it's very meaningful for the United States, for us to take care of those veterans and for what they've done for us in protecting this country. But no, I thanks for that time on that. Appreciate it.
Well, Mark, I enjoy seeing your posts on Facebook and how you are able. It's obvious what your involvement is with the veterans, and I think the fact that you appreciate them, that we should all be thankful that the veterans provide us with the freedom that we all enjoy in the United States, for sure. So,
yes.
And what you do and people like yourself do, to me, is incredible. Kudos to everybody involved, especially you. Obviously, we feel a much closer bond to what you're doing, and we track it a lot easier. So,
Yeah, and if it weren't for that, Mark, we wouldn't be sitting here right now for the service they provide this country. I wouldn't have gotten a chance. I've had all the great conversations and continue to hope to have with you in the future. They're the reason that we're here tonight. Let's not forget about that as well.
Yeah. They're fun to talk to. They've got some great stories. And it's always good to see them and just listen in.
Well, Mark, we always enjoy listening to your stories, and we look forward to being back on the show relatively soon. But thanks a lot for joining us here in the Sports Exchange. And Lewis, any final thoughts to Mark?
No, always a pleasure, Mark. Hope to speak to you again soon, and can't wait to get baseball season started. I'm not sure where your head is on that, but I have February 12th imaginarily circled on my calendar because that's when most pitchers and catchers report. And the sound of the baseball hitting the leather or hitting the wooden bat is something that I yearn for when I'm watching first downs and hoops for the remainder of the year.
Yeah, Mark, would you expect it any other way with this guy?
Why, heck no. He's got it all down.
There you go.
He's got it all mapped out. I just sit back and listen and say, well, I didn't know that. My doggone it.
I know.
I'm going to have to get on the whip here.
Yeah, I enjoy having a front seat with the two of you, and I enjoy chiming in where necessary. But, it's fun, and I'm glad that we can continue to keep the cohesiveness and the synergy going. And, again, we look forward to having you on the show real soon, Mark. But thanks for being on tonight. We appreciate you very much.
Sounds good. Have a good one, guys.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Take care.
Good night. Okay, so what's your take on what Mark had to say? I know we covered a lot of areas. I'm going to throw this one your direction, okay? We touched on it just a little bit. Mark Fidrych, what little you do or don't know about him. For me, living in the Detroit area, Lewis, watching a guy put 45 to 50,000 people in Tiger Stadium, getting on the All-Star team, being a starting pitcher, and yet he broke down way too early, had a lot of complete games. It's still, what were your thoughts about Mark Fidrych talking to the ball first before you get into any more numbers?
Well, yeah, I mean, baseball has its characters, whether, that's the fact that Wade Boggs ate a bunch of chicken and probably drank 100,000 beers on a cross-country flight, or maybe the fact that, Fidrych talked to the ball a lot, or just a couple of, there's Larry Walker, his number 33 being kind of symbolic with his entire career. Superstition, I think, is something that's a part of the game. When he would give up hits with the ball, and I know a little bit about Fidrych. I know he's actually a Massachusetts guy. Funny, we're talking about the Red Sox. I mean, unfortunate the way that he had to pass away so young back in 2009.
Right.
But for the 2 years that he was really, on 76, 77 with Detroit, he kind of energized that team, and he was there for the start of Alan Trammell and Lou Whitaker. So he saw that. I mean, Fidrych's 1976 season, I believe it was a Sunday night baseball game with he was facing the Yankees, and he threw a 2-1 complete game.
Was it a Sunday night, or was it a Monday night game?
It may have been. Again,
it was a primetime game.
It was definitely a primetime game. I believe they used to have a baseball night in America in the 70s, and you couldn't really watch baseball as much.
Right. Well, Monday night baseball, Lewis, was more prevalent back then than Sunday night. I think Sunday night, actually, now that I think about it, you brought it up, thanks for doing that, was more of a ESPN thing.
Yeah.
Where Monday night baseball was really what you had back when I was growing up.
So it may have been that. I mean, Mark made a good point. When we were talking about David Price, I like how he tied it in. Fidrych was a sinker baller, so if you really look at Fidrych's number, he wasn't necessarily a strikeout pitcher, but you can put that aside when you look at he was a character. I mean, I think the dude hosted Saturday Night Live, for Christ's sake. I mean, in its infancy, because Saturday Night Live comes on the air in 75, and then you have a year later, Fidrych's is having that big season with them in 76.
Right.
And he's hosting it. I mean, he's pretty much doing everything that year. I mean, he was a monster for that team, and he broke down in 78, and then 1980 kind of called it quits after 84 with trying to rehab with the Red Sox. It never
the reason he got that shot with the Red Sox was Ralph Houck was his manager, and Ralph Houck believed in Detroit, and Ralph tried to give him an opportunity, but unfortunately, back then, a young pitcher that broke down, he ended up having arm issues and knee injuries and so forth, and it was just a shame because, baseball can use pitchers or players, I should say, Lewis, like Mark Fidrych, and I don't care about that's what the sport needs. You don't have a real guy that can market the sport, then you had it with a full Carroll like Mark Fidrych.
Yeah, he was a super blue collar. I mean, he came from Massachusetts. He kind of spoke very improper, but he was just so good at what he did for that short amount of time. I mean, he's kind of like Herb Score. Herb Score had a very great career prior to getting hit in the face by a Gil McDougall line drive in the late 50s, and his career was never the same. I mean, Fidrych's kind of just had to hang it up after that, and there was nothing really that he could have done. But, I mean, sometimes some of the brightest stars don't shine for that long, and I guess he was one of them.
Well, he's one of those situations where you didn't have pitch counts back then either, and, he broke down. I mean, now that we have all the science of how you throw the ball and a lot of the idiosyncrasies that we have now technology-wise, would that have saved Fidrych? Who knows? We'll never know. It's a hypothetical. It's all it really is, Lewis, is a hypothetical.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking to that, Nolan Ryan made a really good point a few years ago, and pretty much, and it's weird. I mean, I think Nolan Ryan's a surefire Hall of Famer, but I can make the case a little overrated. Sorry if I stir a few pots there. But Nolan Ryan said this: it's kind of crazy that with the advancements in medical technology and just all the additional technology that we have, cameras and all this, things that they didn't really have when he debuted in 1966, the fact that the prevalence of arm injuries and just injuries to pitchers has risen so much. And I believe the first time I was ever on air with you, I made this point to Mark that pitchers in 2017 missed 90,000 days with arm injuries. It's something that's prevalent. Tommy John surgeries galore. It is weird. I mean, Nolan Ryan makes a good point. Why is it that with all of these advancements, we're still having pitchers break down? It's like we as humans are inherently doing something wrong that's leading to this happening, or just people?
Well, my question has always been: is there too much weightlifting involved, and does the body have a chance to recover as much? I mean, again, that's just a question. I'm not a doctor or medical person to be able to fully comment on the extent of that. But our guys are. So I'm going to throw that question at you, okay? And that's this, okay? Do you think that guys are overexerting themselves in the weight room? Because back then they had a different conditioning routine.
I'll be brief with it because I know our next guest is set to come on soon. But Noah Syndergaard was one guy who was very big into bodybuilding and powerlifting, and he was a very, very strong. I mean, the guy was deadlifting 500 pounds, squatting 5 plates, and as we saw, he was pitching at a high level, but he was, very injury prone. I mean, it kind of cost him last year. Last year was the worst season of his career, and the year before that, he pitched less than 60 innings.
Right.
So I mean, weightlifting has its benefits and its detractors. I mean, really though, like if you want to use it in a case study, Pedro Martinez wasn't necessarily big in the weight room, but he broke down too after 2004. He was never really that same pitcher again for a full season. So I mean, you can attribute it to that, but I think it's a bevy of factors that really influence that. I don't necessarily think you can pinpoint it down to one particular thing. Maybe you want to pinpoint it to just the way that coaches are working with players nowadays, young players, and the way that these guys aren't really kids are playing 100 games a year at the age of 13, 14. That's not healthy. I mean, when I grew up playing baseball, and again, I grew up in the time when this was really happening. I played 20 games a year if I was lucky.
Right.
And I still experience arm injuries. So maybe it just comes down to coaching at the lower levels.
Yeah, I guess there's no rhyme and reason to it, to be honest with you. There really isn't. Again, nowadays, the requirements back then, pitchers are only pitching 7 innings a game, and they have 5 days rest versus back in the day. You had a 4-man rotation versus a 5-man rotation, and it's even getting to a point where sometimes, who knows whether there'll be a trend, whether you're going to have a 6-man rotation.
Yeah, and we've seen teams do that before. The Mets did that when they had the likes of Rafael Montero in their rotation a couple of years back because they wanted to preserve the arms of the other guys. But the problem is that most of these pitchers were still throwing in between starts. So in a sense, a 4-man rotation may work. I mean, we saw a couple of years ago, Jim Tracy, who was a very respected major league manager, did this, and it's idiotic for the sake of this discussion. He had his pitchers, I believe this was 2011 or 12, 4 innings, 75 pitches. And if you throw more than 75 pitches, you're probably going to pitch less in your next start. I don't think that works, but that was in regards to the altitude in Colorado, and then taking that into account.
Jim Tracy, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
Yeah, well, he was the Colorado Rockies manager, I believe, after Clint Hurdle was fired.
Right.
And he led them to some success. He was there when Carlos Gonzalez came up. But, no. I mean, you know what? I've never really pondered whether a 4-man rotation would work, because if you really think about it, the guy who starts on, say, Monday and pitches again on Saturday because you may have an off day, you're throwing 2 or 3 days in between that start, so your arm's getting that much more added work, and then it's gonna hurt you when you get into your start. It'll affect you. Some guys respond differently, others don't.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's gonna ever evolve. I think you're kind of just getting away from the traditional starting pitcher. We've seen openers come into the game, and that's kind of brought us away from that as well.
All right, our next guest is Charlotte Bats CEO Rick Curdy. Welcome back to the Sports Exchange, Rick. Glad to have you with us.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thanks. Louis Adio Weiss is in the house, the new editor.
Hey, Louis, how are you?
What's going on, Rick?
So, Rick, let's go ahead and talk baseball, Louis's main sport. What you got?
Well, the Dodgers pulled off a big, massive trade, and the Dodgers are getting Mookie Betts, so that's pretty exciting. But I think in the short run, I think it's good for them. But in the long-term run, I think it's going to benefit the Dodgers. So will benefit the Red Sox. So with all those draft picks we're getting, and I'm sure Mookie Betts is going to be asking for the moon when his contract is up. So we'll see what happens, but so far I think it's a good trade for the Dodgers. But I think in the long run it'll benefit the Red Sox. Looks like they're going to be rebuilding with the whole Cora debacle, the whole cheating thing. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, I mean, and Rick, they also gave up David Price in that trade. I personally think a lot of people are criticizing the Red Sox because they feel like that they didn't get enough for Betts, but you also have to factor in that when you're trading a guy with 1 year of service time left, like if Chris Bryant, for example, the Cubs, who's going to be a free agent after 2021, given Manfred's stupid ruling on a grievance that he filed a few years ago, if he were to be traded now with 2 years of control left, you would get a more sizable return because you're going to have that player for 300-plus regular season games and into the postseason should he go to a team. Betts had 1 year of club control left. He's making $27 million, so he's already a little expensive. He's not exactly your dollar store baseball player that you're trying to, get on the roster. But that being said, to get Alex Verdugo, an immediate replacement because the Dodgers have a wealth of outfielders, and is a right-handed hitter who's going to he's going to mash in that ballpark. Verdugo also a very low strikeout rate, very similar to Betts, is going to benefit from that. Right-handed hitter is going to hit a lot of balls off the pesky pole. Or not pesky pole, I'm sorry, the Green Monster Fenway. And then you get a guy like Bruiser Gradial who has big upside, big 100-mile-an-hour fastball. The command is a bit of an issue. They have a guy like that already in Darwinzon Hernandez. I understand Boston has a very weak farm system, but when you look at this team on paper, minus Price, they're paying him $48 million of the $96 they still owe him, so the Dodgers are kind of giving him discount Black Friday style. Still, though, I think, Boston really still isn't a bad team. You just kind of have to... The Dodgers, too, are banking on the health of Price because him and Kershaw haven't thrown 200 innings apiece since 2015 and 16, respectively. So that's something you have to keep in mind. They may be World Series favorites in the National League now, but at the end of the day, if Verdugo isn't healthy the full year in Boston, Boston will suffer a little bit. They're not going to win the division. I think the Yankees have it wrapped up, though they have had a problem with Paxton being out for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, given his back injury. Betts is going to be healthy. You're going to rely on him there. But Price, you don't know if you're going to get 180 innings out of him because he's got a torn UCL. He's had a history of elbow tendonitis, and he's kind of broken. He broke down last year. He only threw 107 innings. Give me your take on that. I mean, the Dodgers are a great team now, and I think they're my favorite to win the National League, pennant. But at the end of the day, if Kershaw gets hurt early, if Price gets hurt, if Buehler has his first half struggles the way he did at the start of 2019, and Urias doesn't pitch the amount of innings they want him to, they're finally going to let him loose this year. This is a team that could still struggle to win ball games, given that those injuries could mount, and they've mounted in the past for them.
Go ahead, Rick.
Well, the problem with the Dodgers is that we still got Kershaw and we still got Roberts, and so far Kershaw's been the biggest choker in all of sports. This guy goes from Sandy Koufax, and then he turns into Tom Niedenstewer in the playoffs. And he shrinks like a daffodil. So I don't know. The Dodgers are a mess. Okay, their front office is incompetent. They don't know what they're doing. Dave Roberts should not be the manager anymore. Mike Scioscia needs to be the manager of the Dodgers so they can get Mookie Betts, Mookie Wilson, whoever they want to get, Woodrow Wilson. They're still going to be the same Dodgers as long as they got that incompetent front office. As long as they got the choker in Clayton Kershaw, and as long as they got Dave Roberts, who does the most dumbest, most boneheaded moves in the playoffs of any manager I have ever seen in my life. So the Dodgers are going to be the Dodgers, and if Mookie Betts stays, he stays, but they're going to have to pay him a lot of money. So probably in the long run, it's good for the Dodgers. So we'll see what happens.
You can call Kershaw a choke artist, but I agree to disagree. If you really look... I'll use an example of a series that the Dodgers should have won now in retrospect. Let's go in the time machine and go back.
He's choked in every playoffs. He's choked with the Cardinals.
And most of them, yes.
Astros.
In one particular moment, yes. And
no, not one particular. It's many moments. He choked.
No, one particular moment in those respective series. I agree with you.
I know 3 incidences where he's choked, and Dave Roberts will keep him in there. He was so bad they put him in the bullpen. He still choked. So he's a choker. He's a great player, but he's like Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning in his early career, where Peyton Manning was great in the regular season, and then when he was younger, he would choke in the playoffs, and that's what's going on with Clayton Kershaw. He keeps choking and choking and choking, and I don't care who they get. I don't care who the Dodgers get. I don't care if they got Whitey Herzog coming back. Kershaw and Dave Roberts are the problem, and you got a great manager out there, Mike Scioscia, who's a Dodger. He's not an Angel. He's a Dodger. You need to put in Mike Scioscia as a manager, get rid of Dave Roberts, do something with Kershaw, because there's something, it's more like psychological than anything else of why he chokes. But he's a choke job. I love him. I'm from Los Angeles, grew up a Dodger fan. I'm still a Dodger fan. But the truth is that Clayton Kershaw is a choker and will always be a choker. And that's just how it is.
Now, would you still... I agree he's done that in multiple series, but let's go back to the 2017 World Series. The 11 innings that he pitches against Houston, outside of Houston. Again, we need to remember now, in context, that Game 5 where Kershaw is charged with 7 runs because Kenta Maeda comes in and gives up that home run to Altuve. They knew what was coming. They were stealing signs. That's evident. Clayton Kershaw should have a World Series ring. Who does he face in the World Series next year? Another team incited on cheating.
And I should be 7 feet tall playing for the Lakers, but I'm not. So
You can go
multiple times, so it doesn't matter. He choked with the Cardinals, he choked with the Astros, he choked with the Nationals. There's 3 incidents right there. Probably more times he choked. He's a choke job. That's the end of the story.
All right, let me say one thing about this whole thing, okay? And that's this. I got to give Rick this, though, Lewis. Mike Scioscia, as a Dodger manager, in my opinion, would make some sense. First of all, we talk about catchers being good managers, and Mike Scioscia is a Dodger in every sense of the word.
Yeah,
and don't lose sight of the fact that the Dodgers have not won a World Series since 1988, and he was a part of a World Series champion Dodger. So, I will side on with Rick Curdy in this particular case. Now, has Kershaw had his moments? Yeah, but not enough, Lewis. He really hasn't. So
I know, I understand
I know,
that.
but let me point this out, okay? Rick is right in a lot of counts. When you look at his overall body of work in the postseason, it has not been that great. Now, bringing David Price out there, how much will that help? Well, I don't know. Time will tell. In fact, he's going to the National League with one less hitter to go ahead and face against. But Dave Roberts, to me, is a good manager, but until this guy demonstrates his ability to make the right moves in the postseason, he'll only be viewed as a good regular season manager, Lewis. And this is what I think, and this is what he does. I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong, but I like Mike Scioscia as a possible candidate to replace Roberts down the road if it's ever meant to happen. And not only that, think about it. Mike Scioscia won a world championship with the Angels.
Yeah. 20 years ago.
Well, it doesn't matter. He won one, Lewis. He did.
No, I know.
How many? Well, hold on, Lewis. Wait a minute. Hold on, Rick. Okay, 20 years. He won one with the Angels of all teams, man.
Yeah, right by Disneyland now. But
all right, whatever. So what are we calling? Who are we calling? Mickey Mouse or Minnie Mouse here, or Donald Duck? Let's play the old Disney theme for a minute here. What? In fact, before you go on, Rick, okay, if you had to talk about a Disney character to describe Clayton Kershaw, what would you call him?
Oh, God.
Yeah, I know. I was waiting for that one.
Dopey.
Okay.
Dopey.
What about you?
Sleepy.
I'm not gonna say that again. I understand the blowups are there. He's, taking the sports writer's hat off, throwing it in the garbage can real quick. As a fan, he's my favorite player. So I've been pretty hurt by every year having to stand in front of the TV with my heart beating quicker than somebody in the ER, like waiting to see if their family member's okay, because it's almost like every year it happens and it frustrates me, but I can look past the last 2 years that it's happened. I think Kershaw's blow-up in 2019 was Dave Roberts' fault 100%. I think Roberts should have been fired after that postseason. One reason why I don't think Scioscia will work, his managing tendencies are inundated. The reason that the Angels let him go is because they had a plan they wanted to implement now, that they're doing now, and it's
15 years, Lewis.
Longevity is one thing. Connie Mack was co-owner of the A's for 50 years, but there were years that they won 36, 37 games. Doesn't mean you're necessarily a great manager every year. Again, I don't think Scioscia's run with the Angels or with the Dodgers would be like Brad Ausmus, because the Angels front office, I'm getting the city up.
Well, I'm not going there.
Listen. What I'm saying is it will be short-lived, just because Paul Molitor is a legend in Minnesota, though he only played 3 years with the Twins. They fired him. I'm just saying you're going to burn a bridge there. Scioscia's way at looking at the game, while it worked in 2002, and you know what? He handled Barry Bonds as well as he could have in that series. He didn't grow with the times and the way that front offices think. I mean, for Christ's sake, there's teams that have won the World Series with a different school of thought than the way Scioscia won in 2002. Baseball in 2002 is a different game than it was now. Scioscia is gonna, you know what? If he wants to manage again, he can, because he has that longevity as a player and then as a manager. Somebody's gonna give him an interview and they're gonna look him over. But you need to be receptive to new ideas, and I think that was kind of what was his wrongdoing in with the Angels is he just really never changed as a manager. But Roberts, in my opinion, yeah, he should be fired, but I'm not going to place the blame on Kershaw entirely. Their bullpen was atrocious in that series. Their bullpen was, A.J. Pollock couldn't hit the backside of a barn in that series against the Nationals. So to pinpoint it to maybe one of the greatest players in their franchise's history, I think is a little redundant.
All right, but let me tell you, okay, and that's this. if a manager lasts, Lewis, 10 years in one spot, he's doing well. If you hit 15, it's another story. There comes a point in time where you do need a new change of voice, and I think that's what it had come down to with Solskjaer. It doesn't matter whether his times were. I don't care about that stuff. Okay, to me, he did a great job for that franchise, and don't you ever think about the fact that if you get a second opportunity that you might reevaluate what you've done a little bit. Wait a minute. Hold on. How many times have guys gone out there and had a second opportunity and done well with them? And you know, I know it's not your sport, okay? So we have to kind of get out of your sport. But Bill Belichick did all right when he got a second opportunity to the tune of 6 world championships with the Patriots. Now, we've got to leave you out of the NFL because we want to keep you in baseball here for a minute. But really, all kidding aside, Lewis, okay? Maybe it was time for Solskjaer to move on, and he knew that. But, you know, again, if he decides to go ahead and manage, he will. He would do it under the right situation. So, you know, listen, nobody's going to debate whether Clayton Kershaw will get in the Hall of Fame. I think he certainly had numbers that would merit that. But it certainly wouldn't hurt to have that championship ring. But you got to remember this, Lewis, and Rick knows, the Dodgers are a desperate franchise. Remember that. They're desperate. They haven't won since 1988, pal. They haven't, okay? So, therefore, they're trying to out-Hollywood the other team with the Mookie Betts versus Mike Trout. And as my buddy Chris Roberts would say, there isn't enough star power in L.A. to keep it all interesting out there because L.A. is built around stars. Right, Rick?
Look, Solskjaer sustained winning. He did it. They won really... For most of the 2000s, they were the best team in the American League West. The point here, though, is that, you know, I don't know if that translates over. I'll give you an example. Dusty Baker did well in his 2 seasons as the manager of the Nationals, but they were eliminated in the early rounds of the playoffs. If you look at the Angels after Solskjaer wins that World Series, I'm not really a fan who thinks I win it 1 year, so for the next 10 years I can kind of just have these early playoff exit, maybe even throw in a sub-500 year. I think you want to win every year, and I'm sure that's his objective. But his managing tendencies didn't evolve to the point where he doesn't really deserve to work with a team like the Dodgers because there's too much bobbing, there's too much talking heads there, too much different schools of thought.
Okay, that's your opinion. But the one thing I'm going to tell about this is he worked for an owner that was loyal to him in Artie Moreno.
Yeah.
So therefore, you know, an owner feels indebted to a manager that took him to the promised land. How many owners haven't won a world championship, Lewis? A lot of them that have been around for a long time. So don't tell me that there isn't a dynamic where an owner isn't indebted to his manager. Again, those are things that maybe down the road will keep rekindle this discussion. But I'm not downplaying, neither is Rick, that Clayton Kershaw wouldn't be a Hall of Famer at some point because he's relatively young. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 32. He'll be
well,
33.
he is right now, but I'll tell you what, all it takes is one championship ring to shake it off a little bit. But time will tell. But 108 wins to fall as short as they did, to me, was inexcusable. It really was. 108 wins.
106, 107 wins.
Well, whatever. But the point is, right. But here's the thing. In the National Hockey League, Lewis, okay, a sport that I know you're very familiar with, just because you win the President's Cup doesn't mean you're guaranteed to win the Stanley Cup. It's like, you know, to me it's a moral victory to win that many games, but how many President's Cup winners have gone on to win the Stanley Cup? It's not easy to sustain excellence to go from the regular season to the postseason because once you're in a series for a sustained period of time, you make adjustments is what you do versus what you do during the course of a regular season. And you know it better than anybody, Lewis. Baseball is a marathon, my man. It is. You have to play 180 to 200 games a year. It's a marathon. Go ahead.
Rick, 2 years ago, if I asked you what is David Price's postseason reputation without looking at a computer screen, what can you tell me about it? Because all I can tell you is that it looks like a bunch of pig manure. Because he was one of the worst.
Tell me how you really feel.
He was one of the worst postseason pitchers, and he still is statistically one of the worst postseason pitchers of all time. Yes, he won a World Series, but again, that's kind of tainted now. The 2 World Series that Kershaw was in, he pitched relatively well in most of those games. The one blow-up that he has in Houston, and again, I'll defend Clayton Kershaw until the day I die.
Obviously.
They were stealing. They were at home and stealing signs. The other 2 games, Rick, at Dodger Stadium that he pitched in that World Series, 11 innings, 15 strikeouts, 1 earned run. So, you know what? He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. St. Louis, he has the one bad game in 2013 in Game 6 of that championship series. 2014, Don Mattingly has Hanley Ramirez playing shortstop. Well, I don't understand why that's happening. He's one of the worst defenders at that position ever. bobbles a ball. Second baseman can't get to a ball after that, and then he hangs a curveball to Matt Adams, whatever. But the overall lines in most of those games aren't terrible. It's just you know what? I think
if ifs and buts were candy, then that's we'd all have a wonderful Christmas. If you're a great player, you make adjustments to it, and you forget the excuses of what Mattingly and all this stuff do. You do a good job.
Sure, I mean
people that won championships with way less than won championships.
Yeah, I mean the 1960 Pirates.
Mess right now, and now they got another choker in David Price. So now they got the 2 choke jobs in LA, and they got another choker with Dave Roberts who makes boneheaded moves. And I'm telling you, they can get whoever they want. Winning 108 games and winning division by 21 and a half, which is a record, and you lose in the first round was the biggest choke job in recent Major League Baseball playoffs history. That was a disgrace what happened to them, and Dave Roberts should have been fired on the spot. He got Mike Scioscia available. So,
I don't disagree with you about Roberts.
And I'm sure that Mike Scioscia's WAR is a little higher than Brad Ausmus's.
Yeah, you can't even bring in Brad Ausmus in this. Come on, Lewis, you're a very intelligent guy, but don't bring Brad Ausmus into this equation, man. Yeah, come on, Lewis, really. Give yourself more credit. You can't bring in Brad Ausmus. He was victimized by a lot of bad luck, and following a manager like Scioscia didn't help. But they did make the right hire in Joe Madden, and Mickey Callaway should help the cause with the Angels. But I understand both points of view, and it's really neat to listen to the two of you guys butt heads about the difference between a choke artist versus not a choke artist, because that's what you call energy, and that's what you call different points of views, and I love it.
Yeah, look.
Well, I'm also upset that people are still bitter about Derek Jeter not getting 100% of the votes. I mean, he got 99 point something, so I mean, he still got in right away, so that's another debate that people are still angry about, and yet Hank Aaron didn't get in 100%, Babe Ruth didn't get 100%, or Willie Mays. Willie Mays, the greatest all-around baseball player, in my opinion, he didn't get 100%. Nolan Ryan didn't even get 100%, and yet people are so outraged that Derek Jeter didn't get 100%. Now, that's crazy to me.
I think a little bit of that outrage, too, comes from the fact that his teammate, Mariano Rivera, got it, because there's nothing that you can... Other than if you really want to be finicky and say relievers are just failed starters, which in a sense they are. Rivera made 10 starts with the Yankees in 95 before transitioning to being John Wetland's towel boy as a setup man before he became the closer in 97. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think a lot of that stems from Rivera's unanimous selection, and then Jeter being one of the core 4 with Pettit, Posada, and Rivera. I mean, throw Bernie Williams in there too, but he debuted 4 or 5 years before any of those guys. So I think that's where part of that comes from, and then just the universal respect that Jeter kind of, merited during the entirety of his career is kind of why people feel that way. But at the end of the day, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer regardless.
99.7. Get real. I know you want to hear. I mean, I talk to people.
Round up.
What about all the racism that he went through with going after a Babe Ruth home run record where he was almost like killed and
death threats?
And,
yeah,
family was harassed. And yet this guy don't even get 100%. This guy has over 3,700 hits. And to me, he's still the all-time home run king.
So does Scott, too.
Look at all the years he put in there. And he didn't get 100%, which is baffling to me. Hank Aaron is one of the most greatest baseball players, icons that ever lived.
Happy birthday today, by the way. Today's Hank Aaron's 86th birthday, by the way. Happy 86th birthday to Hammer and Hank.
Hammer and Hank. We love Hammer and Hank.
I'll leave it with this. If you take away all of Hank Aaron's 755 home runs, he still has 3,016 career hits. So put into context just how great an all-around player Hank Aaron really was.
All right, well, you know what, Rick, we got to give Lewis the benefit of the doubt here that he came up with a statistic, okay, like that one to end the segment, okay? Because you know what? This is the one thing that all three of us can probably agree on, and there's no better way to cap that segment than us agreeing on something, because you two definitely have proven what you don't agree on, and I like being the monkey in the middle to watch it all and get a front row seat. So with that said, Rick, thanks for being on the Sports Exchange. And Rick, why don't you let people know how they can follow you on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter at Charlotte Bats Baseball, and our email address is charlottebatsbaseball@gmail.com, and our website is www.charlottebats.com, and you can just follow us and tell all your friends about us and sign our petition.
Hey, Rick, why don't you get Mike Scioscia to be your manager?
I will. I'll definitely get him over Brad Ausmus.
Yeah, mention me in the introductory press conference when you hire him.
3 jobs that Brad Ausmus will have recently, and Mike Scioscia was there for 15 years.
Brad Ausmus is firing. It's funny. Rick Renneria was fired by the Cubs after 1 year for Joe Madden with a 3-year contract. Brad Ausmus was fired after 1 year and a 3-year contract for Joe Madden.
Well, let me go ahead and take it a step further, okay, if you guys are going to bring that up.
Joe Madden was stupid on the Cubs part.
Well, here, let me tell you this.
David Ross, I mean, give me a break.
I want to end it on this note. Les Moss got fired and Sparky Anderson became the Tigers manager. How did that turn out for the Tigers? Well, okay, Mr. Stat, because we got to go ahead and give him Mr. Stat, Mr. War, whatever the hell he calls himself. Yeah, but let me finish my point about Anderson and Moss, okay? Sparky Anderson became the first manager to win a World Series in each league. Don't say nothing. I can get one statistic right. Okay, Mr. Stat. You don't have to. All right. With that said, guys, well done, and I look forward to having this boxing match between Rick Curdy and Louis Adio Weiss here on the program.
Cage match.
Oh, it's great. I'll tell you, I don't know if I should call you guys boxing or UFC. Well, let all of our listeners out there go ahead and make the determination. Rick, well done, and Louis, well done as well. Before you get off, Louis, why don't you let everybody know how they can follow you on Twitter?
Adio_Louis00. I am the editor at the South Florida Tribune. I help make Candy Ebling's nights a little bit easier when she's trying to eat dinner and relax and catch up on her crime dramas while she's doing a little bit of editing as well. But yeah, follow me at Adio_Louis00. You can find me on Facebook at Louis Adio Weiss, and follow the South Florida Tribune on Facebook and all social media as well.
All right, guys, well done. Rick, I'll talk to you soon. And meanwhile, you're just to let you know, next week you're going to be talking about the XFL. I know you're very vocal about it, so be prepared for next week. We're going to be doing that. But meanwhile, a great job to both of you guys. I really enjoy the energy between you guys, and I'm going to leave it at that, because if I get a no comment, it's a rarity on this program, and God only knows I'm filled with a lot of them. So, all right, with that said, okay, Candy Ebling's going to take over for Louis Adio Weiss. Louis, great job tonight. Rick, as always, great job. All right, have a good night, both of you guys.
All right.
You too.
All right, so with that said, Candy Ebling takes over for Louis Adio Weiss. And Candy, what are your thoughts about Louis's ability to go out there and mix it up here on the diamond? She's a little speechless after that. Go ahead, Candy.
I don't know if I can top that act.
That's a real good act, isn't it?
Yep, they did a really good job. Really proud of them. Baseball minded, you bet. Really good. Can't believe it. I don't know that I want to follow that one. That's a tough act to follow.
I don't know. I enjoyed it myself. But meanwhile, our next guest here on the Sports Exchange is South Florida Tribune contributor Jason Prog. And Jason, thanks for being on the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you, Scott?
All right. Well, you're not talking baseball, but a development out in East Lansing took place that caught a lot of us off guard, and that's the decision for Mark D'Antonio to step down. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that. We can start anywhere. We can start where, just kind of where he came in from Cincinnati as an assistant over there from 04 to 06. And when you look at a guy who just was almost like an icon at Michigan State, and he won 110 games, won 3 Rose Bowls, back two-time head coach of the year. To see kind of what's happening, I think that he decided to call it quits. Yes, to spend time with his family, I get that. But let's be honest, he's had a lot of scrutiny over the last couple of years, not only just on the field issues, with his offense not scoring enough points as far as just running football. According to ESPN, there's a lot of reports out right now that there had been a recent lawsuit coming up against the university and D'Antonio, and of course you probably have already heard about that. But as far as this is concerned, it's a big issue for Mark because I think that Mark couldn't coach his football team accordingly to what he wants and expects, with a lot of off the field issues coming, that came along in his way, and I just think that really altered his decision of why he just called it quits, Scott.
It's interesting how you bring that up, Jason, because I know that for D'Antonio to make a decision to retire that abruptly, there had to be a little bit more to that thing than meets the eye. It really was. I know that the stress got to him a little bit before the season. Then they had the average year. Thankfully, I think they won their bowl game, though, didn't they? If I remember
they
right.
have. And, they're very good about his bowl games.
Yeah, in fact, they beat Wake Forest now that I think about it. So at least he goes out on a winning note, though, Jason.
He came out and said, there's no relevance whatsoever from the future fallout that he's been, from his tenure there. And I don't know if I necessarily believe that totally. I just think that, with the former recruiting director, Curtis Blackwell, who was let go 3 years ago as an assistant, he and D'Antonio had been going on recruiting visits. So I don't know if Blackwell is just coming out and saying, hey, listen, I don't think the university done me right, or the head coach. Well, we'll see what happens. It's I think as a football guy, Scott, Mark is a good player. He actually did play safety as a safety in college, but he's been a great coach for Michigan State. Just an icon there, and it's unfortunate that it just had to unravel like this. But there's other scandals that have been going on in college sports in the past. Pete Carroll at USC, that is one of them. A notable one. So you see that. I think as time goes on, and I think it's a sad day for Michigan State. But it isn't a sad day because they have his guys on there. Mike Trussell, he will have that team ready to go. So expect them to be coming in as underrated football team at the beginning of the year, and with a chip on their shoulders, Scott.
You know what, Jason? That's an interesting point. First of all, Mark D'Antonio leaves the Spartans as the all-time winningest coach in that program's history. That's item number one. I know Mark Trussell's been hired as the interim guy. I know a national search is underway for his successor. I know Michigan State's not in any hurry to make that hire until they feel it's a very quality hire. I don't think Pat Narduzzi would leave Pittsburgh to go back there. And Luke Fickell is a name that's been brought up, but yet he's never coached outside of the state of Ohio. But I'm curious to see where that search leads, especially knowing that you've had National Signing Day upon them. So the question is how many players has D'Antonio signed? Will they stay with the Spartans? I guess that's a question that we're all curious about. Any information that you know of?
I think that's that last question. I'm sorry, Scott.
That's all right. I'll be curious to see how many players that D'Antonio's recruited would stay with the program, or whether they decide to ride it out with a new coach. Although I hear D'Antonio's still going to stay with the athletic department.
Yes. Pat Narduzzi brought up a good name. I like it. I'm not sure if that's going to happen yet or not. But Mike Trussell, if you've seen his recruits, he just brought in. He just signed off on a number of 3- and 4-star recruits. So, Michigan State's always been a 3-star type of team, type of university where they're going to try to coach up these guys. And the coaching has just been superb, but the last 3 or 4 years have just really took a downward spiral. So, when they get that coaching back, if Trussell can bring in some young assistants, there's no telling they could, 8-4, 8-4, 9-3, but he was 8-4 versus Michigan, D'Antonio, and so it's going to be exciting. I can't, football's we just got done with the football, this year, right? So we're already talking about it already for September. So it's exciting stuff all the time, Scott.
Yeah, I think it is. I guess now that you brought up Tressel, I don't know much about him, Jason, so I can't really fully